Building a custom subwoofer box for a vehicle is really cool, and it can add a ton of sound to your car audio system. But what fun is a normal looking subwoofer box? We of course want to dress it up, we want to make it look custom, and we want to make it match the rest of the interior of the vehicle or the rest of the build. So what are some fabrication techniques that you could use to trim out the front of a subwoofer box and make it look awesome? That's coming up in this build log video. Hey there, Mark here with CarAudioFabrication, the show where together we learn how to master car audio and how to design, build, and install a car audio system that not only sounds amazing, but looks amazing as well. Now, if you've been following along, in one of my recent videos, I just finished making a custom stacked or layered style subwoofer enclosure for the Jeep build. Now, the point where I left off, the box is completely enclosed. In fact, I've actually listened to it for a few days. I'm really happy with the results, and there'll be a listening test coming soon. But I really want to add a custom look to the front of this box. So first of all, I know I want to make a trim ring that goes around the outside perimeter of this shape of the box. I'm also going to have to make the beauty panel that actually goes inside the trim ring and has some decorative effect on it to match the rest of the install. And I'm also going to have to do some roundovers on the back side of the box because I know that ultimately I want to wrap this entire enclosure with vinyl. So I'm going to want that vinyl to kind of smoothly go around the back side of the edge here, so I'll need to do that. So that should give us a good starting point. Let's start with making the stuff here on the front. I'm going to start with copying the profile here to a piece of 1/8 inch MDF. I'm doing this so that I'll have a master template that I can work with. Let's lay some template tape down here, and if you're new to my videos, the point of the template tape is it's a double-sided tape, so it allows me to stick this wood temporarily to the subwoofer box. Peel the backing paper away here, stick the box back in place. Now, something else I want to make sure that I do here is I actually want to capture the exact location of the subwoofer hole cutout in relation to the rest of the outside of the template. So I'm also going to drill a hole on the center here so that once we go over to the router table to flush trim this all out, I can get that part of the profile as well. Here at the router, I'm using a 1/4 inch spiral flush trim bit. You can see that it has bearings on top that will ride against my existing subwoofer box surface, and then the cutting flute down below will cut that piece of wood. Got the template piece here copied, so I can now remove this from the front of the box. There we have it. There's our master template. And it's actually always a good idea whenever you create a master, make sure you write master on it. That way you don't accidentally cut into it and try to use it for something else. Now, the first piece that I'm going to be making that I'm actually going to be using on the box is going to be that trim ring that goes around the outside. And I'm going to be making that out of this 3/4 inch material. So of course it's time for some more template tape. Now, I notice you guys are always leaving a lot of comments in regards to how much wood I use and using a lot of template tape, and that is absolutely true. This style of fabrication does require the use of a lot of materials. It does require the use of a lot of template tape. That's in fact why a lot of guys that do this professionally do charge what they do. Also, if you're familiar with these videos, all of this process does take quite a bit of time. But regardless of the amount of time it takes and the amount of materials it requires, I find it really fun to do and very rewarding, and I hope that you guys will too. I'm gonna stick this down into position, and now you just give it a little smack like Salt Bae, and it's ready to copy on the router. I need to adjust the router bit bearing height real quick so that I can fully cut through this slightly thicker material. There we go. Now, I was able to do that because I'm actually using what's called a router lift. All the different tools and materials that I use in these videos, I'll have linked down in the video description, but I wanted to show you guys something. This router lift is a little bit expensive, so it's for more of an advanced type user or somebody that's gonna be doing quite a few builds. But actually, the router that I always like to use from Porter Cable, again, it's linked down in the video description, it comes with this special base stock that you can actually take this thing and you can mount it into a table upside down, and you just have a hole cut out in the table. And it actually has, if you see this hole right here, it has an Allen key head on this, and it actually comes with this thing that you can turn. And what that does, when you turn it, it will actually raise the router up and down. So if you buy this particular router, you can actually make yourself a really cost-effective router table setup that has above table height adjustment. I'm gonna fire up my dust collector now. The master template is now copied to this piece of 3/4 inch material, and you may be wondering why I cut out the hole. So the reason I actually cut out the hole is I want to keep that relationship between the outside geometry and this, because even though I'm making this outside profile out of this piece of wood, the inside profile that drops out that you'll see in a second here, I'm going to use that piece as well in the finished product. I'm going to be using this big 1 1/8 inch rabbeting bit on the router to create the profile for the outside here. So this bit is from our show sponsor, Mobile Solutions, and it's part of their smart pattern system. You can see that this tray here normally holds the bit, but it also has a 1/4 inch spiral flush trim bit and a 1/4 inch drill bit, because that is part of the process of what I'm going to need to do. I'll start with the rabbeting bit. I have it raised out of the table approximately 1/8 of an inch because I want to save most of this thickness of the wood material. I'm going to cut in using this bit. So by using that bit, once I flip this over, you can see we have this step. Now I can use the 1/4 inch drill bit, take the 1/4 inch drill bit, and I'm going to carefully drill a hole right next to the edge of that step. Now we've got the 1/4 inch spiral flush trim bit. Push it through that hole. So this gives me a trim ring. Now I'm always going to end up with a little nib like this right here. I can sand that away real quick. See how this looks here. Sweet. Looks like the speaker grill will fit nicely, of course. Now with the outside part made, what we need to do is make the inside part. Now if I put this in position so I can show you guys something, you'll see that we have a 1/4 inch gap between these two pieces, and the reason for that is because we used a 1/4 inch wide spiral flush trim bit. Now ultimately, I'm going to have this surface wrapped with vinyl, and I'm also going to have this surface wrapped with vinyl. And vinyl is approximately 1/32 of an inch in thickness. So if you do 2 layers of vinyl, the thickness would be 2 times 1/32, which is 1/16 of an inch. So because that thickness is going to be 1/16 of an inch, this gap is far too large. So I like where this piece is at. What I actually need to do is expand this outside surface of the inner piece. I need to expand it in order to reduce that gap to 1/16 of an inch. This may sound crazy, and it may sound like excessive work worrying about such a small dimension, but this is what gives you a very, very precise transition between the outside piece to the inside piece. It will look perfect once it's wrapped with vinyl. So I'm going to take this piece off here, and we're going to need to transfer it to a new piece of wood because I'm actually going to expand the profile. In order to expand that piece so that I reduce that gap to 1/16 of an inch, I'm going to be using this flush trim bit, which has an oversized bearing. Rather than just tracing this piece, I'm using a washer because the washer allows me to actually offset my line that I'm drawing. I've rough cut this piece out using a jigsaw, applied more template tape to our piece that dropped out from our profile earlier, and I can center this within the sketched line I drew, stick it into place. So I did the outside profile with that oversized bearing, and again I copied the inside using the flush trim bit because I want to keep that relationship. Here's a quick tip to save yourself some time when using template tape. Instead of trying to pull every single piece up with your finger, just use the template tape itself. It actually sticks really well, and that's why I keep a template tape ball on hand. All right, let's see how this looks. Now we have a much tighter 1/16 inch gap around the full perimeter, which will serve really nicely once we wrap this with material. If you remember, the subwoofer obviously mounts to that surface and then has this grill over it. But the problem now is this hole is not big enough to get around that grill and get this to sit down in here. So what I need to do is expand this hole. Now at this point in the project, I switched over to actually doing an Instagram live stream to show how I oversized the subwoofer cutout hole to perfectly match the outside diameter of the subwoofer. If you'd like to see the future live streams, be sure to follow me at CarAudioFab. I've increased this inside diameter, so now it fits perfectly around the subwoofer trim ring. So now we can start doing a little bit of detail work in this area. We'll start with sketching some offset lines just to transfer some geometry here. So I've got my shape drawn out here. I'm just gonna offset everything 1/4 inch in so I know where to rough cut it using the jigsaw. I've got my 3 different templates template taped to this piece. So I have the oversized bit loaded up. I'm going to make the cuts on these 3 sides, and then I'm going to come in and finalize the cut by sticking a final adjustable template here. With this profile now cut out, got the trim ring, got the inner piece, I can start doing some edge profiling. Now, if you remember on the Amp Rack beauty panel, it featured a lot of these chamfered hard lines. You can see even this trim ring here is chamfered, this is chamfered. I want to carry that theme throughout the sub box as well. I'm going to start the chamfering process with applying a chamfer to this inside shape. Got the chamfers done. Let's see how this looks. I really like the way that this outside chamfer makes the box look. It makes it look more like flowing, if you will. And here's the inside piece. So the inside piece, we of course have a big chamfer on the inside window here to our accent color. And then we have a slight outside chamfer to match this height of this piece of material. And then we have an inside chamfer as well. Another very important thing that I need to do, if you look at where these 2 pieces of material meet one another, this is where we're going to have the transition between the 2 different pieces of vinyl, because these are 2 separately wrapped pieces. But right now, those 2 surfaces touch each other. So what we need to do is actually remove a notch of material to account for that material thickness. Otherwise, what would happen is this piece would sit up higher than what we want it to, because the material would be bunched underneath it. In a similar instance, on the inside of this ring, when we go to wrap the material around the back side, again, we want to allow space for that material on the back side and compensate for it. We'll be compensating for the material thickness once again using this rabbeting bit, and what I'll do is I'll raise it so that it's out of the table approximately a 32nd of an inch, maybe just a little bit over. That way we account for that thickness of the vinyl. I've got all the rabbeted grooves applied to the back side of the pieces here, so you can see that by having that rabbeted groove around the back side, we've got plenty of room for the material to nest. Let's take a look at this and see how everything looks with the subwoofer in place as well. There we have it. So now that I have the pieces actually laying on top of each other, you can see this gap here. That's what I was going for. Now when I wrap this piece of material and this piece in vinyl material, we'll have a nice amount of space for those to wrap inside to that gap. Our gap between the pieces looks great. We've also got a small gap between that surface for the back side of the material, and our subwoofer is in there perfectly. So here we have it. We've added the beauty panels to the front of the subwoofer box. So in the upcoming videos, I need to come up with a way for these to actually secure to the front of the box. I think that I also want to do a little bit more detail work in this area. Once we have those things figured out, we can proceed with wrapping the enclosure. Thank you for checking out this video. If you are new here, I'd absolutely love to have you as a subscriber. A special thanks goes out to Brian, Ali, EJ, Emmanuel, Rory, Truman, and Jerry, and the rest of the Patreon support team. A big thanks to those guys for helping support the making of this content. You can check out the rest of the build here on screen. Once again, thank you for watching.